Sony has released on Twitter just a massive bracket, basically, of video games, putting them head to head to try and decide which is the best game on that list. We have taken those games and we are going to decide for ourselves which one truly is the best. And it's kind of just head to heads. We've got 16 games on the list. And that's it, really. So I'll read them out as the matchups come up, and we'll have a sparking conversation, debate, if you will,
Sparking.
about which one wins. Yeah, I knew he'd laugh at sparking, Dragon Ball freaking.
Oh.
All right. So for our first matchup of the evening, lads, first round of the tournament, the one everyone's watching, we have Uncharted 4 versus Horizon Zero Dawn. Okay, so those are our first two games, lads. Start the conversation. Which one do we think is the better?
Okay, let's recap my experiences quite briefly because we've got a lot to get through it tonight, and quick news obviously took a long time. So thank you very much, listeners and viewers, for sticking with us. I'm glad you're still here at the topic of the show because, as Davey always says, this is an absolute juicer. So we've got Uncharted 4 versus Horizon Zero Dawn. And my experience of Uncharted 4 was pleasant. You know, there was some very high highs within that game, but there was a lot of repetition. I think that was my main criticism for Uncharted 4. It seemed to be rinse and repeat. And of course, swinging around on that lasso was absolutely terrible. There were some amazing set pieces. I'm not going to take it away from it, but it did leave the series for me on a bit of a downer. I think that if this was Uncharted 3 or Uncharted 2, we'd be having a very different conversation. When it comes to Horizon Zero Dawn, I jumped into this game and immediately didn't like it. I didn't understand it. I found myself trying to do things, maybe because I was speaking to yourself, Davey, that was far too advanced and I didn't do any of the basic stuff diving into this game. And I kind of got lost and disillusioned by it. But I got talked back into playing the game. And it became, you know, a fully fledged game because I understood what I was missing out. It was a bit of a dirt moment, understanding that you could actually take over some of the creatures. But once I understood that, that game really started to flesh itself out. And Horizon Zero Dawn, I would class as a better game if I'm facing that off against Uncharted 4, which I am. So my vote here would go to Horizon Zero Dawn.
All right, fair enough. Davey, mate, weigh in. What are your thoughts?
So Uncharted 4 was amazing, right? An amazing experience. And it ends on such a nice moment. And there's so many fan-only moments in Uncharted 4 that kind of make it worth its price of admission. I think about the moment where you're in the attic and you're going around and shooting all the different darts. Or just when the game opens, where you're in like the Hudson River or whatever it is, and you feel like you're diving in some exotic location, and it comes up that, oh no, this is just your day job now, and you're just a family man, you're going to sit down and play Crash Bandicoot. You know, like there's all these cool little moments in it. But whenever I think about Uncharted 4, I always feel like it's the step down of the series. You know, like I don't think of Uncharted 1 in the same light as I do 4, even though 4 is a much better game than Uncharted 1. But Uncharted 1's responsible for getting the franchise off and getting it going. But Uncharted 2 and 3 are so much better than 4. And so I always think about it in like a negative light. Horizon Zero Dawn, you will never hear me talk shit about that game. I fucking love that game. And the big thing about it, the reason why I love it so much, is because the story is fucking incredible. I don't want to go into it too deeply, Spence, because you don't know what that story is, but it's so well written. It's so good. Learning all about Ted Faro and what happened before the fall of humankind is a revelation. And there's a moment where you go up into a skyscraper and you're reading all these text files, and then the story kind of kicks in and it shows you kind of what happened. And it's just fucking eye-opening, and it's just proper, it's hard sci-fi that's taken in a place that I'd never realized it could do. And on top of that, it's added on with just great gameplay throughout, that everything seems to work well together. The different tools that you use all kind of just mesh together to be able to create your own play style in a way that I think even Forbidden West didn't do to the same level that original game did. For me, it's an easy choice. Horizon Zero Dawn every single goddamn day.
Fair enough, boys, which means it's 2 votes for Horizon. My choice is regardless, but I would have gone Uncharted 4 just because I've not put the time into Horizon, and you guys do put Uncharted 4 in a sour light just because 2 and 3 exist. I kind of see 4 separately. I really like 4. I think 4 is fantastic. So that would have been my choice, but alas, Horizon moves forward. We'll give it a 3-0. No, I'll just say 1.
3-0 matchup.
Here we are. Our next round, we have Spider-Man.
Oh.
Spider-Man 1 versus God of War Ragnarok. Well, I don't know who wants to start with this because I need to collect my thoughts, I think. I don't know what I'm going to say. Who wants to take the reins?
Oh, fuck. I'll go. Spider-Man 1 is an amazing experience. It's a solid 9 out of 10. God of War Ragnarok's a fucking 1100 out of 10. The game fucking slaps tits. It's incredible. It's literally my second favorite game of all time. And that is insane praise. Easy slap God of War Ragnarok for me any single goddamn day of the week. Spider-Man's good. It ain't even the best superhero game. Arkham City's better.
Fair enough. Phil, would you like to rebuttal or are you on the same side?
Well, I kind of feel like I have to be on the same side with this one because I can recognize that God of War Ragnarok is a far superior game. But what I will say about Spider-Man, it did kick off a very, very good series with Spider-Man 1, Spider-Man 2, and of course the Miles Morales, which we've all played and which we've all loved. We've got some slight criticisms towards the series, but I think that's because we hold the character of Spider-Man so close to our hearts. Spencer, you wear him on your arm. You know, we are Spider-Man fanboys here on the PlayStation podcast. But unfortunately, when it comes to God of War Ragnarok and Ragnarok specifically, this game is as close as you get to a perfect game. I can't say I enjoyed it to the levels you guys did, but I can appreciate it for what it is. It's like going into a museum and seeing a Picasso and not fully liking it, saying you wouldn't have it in your house, but you can understand why the vast majority of people really appreciate this artist and hold him in such high regard. So God of War Ragnarok is my Picasso.
Well, boys, you'll be surprised to find out that I completely agree. Spider-Man, bless its heart, is a phenomenal game. Brilliant, and probably the best Spider-Man game we've ever had. But it's not one of the best games of all time. God of War Ragnarok is easily one of the best games ever made, not just on the PS5, but ever. This is quite sad for Spider-Man.
It is sad.
He's
sad.
in a pulp, mate. He's choking on his own blood. He's got annihilated by Kratos. There is no way around it. God of War Ragnarok has to go through.
I think against anyone else, it probably would have got past round 1, Spider-Man. I think it is a spectacular game, and it would have fought hard against the vast majority of the games on this list.
I agree. All right, our next matchup, we have Spider-Man Miles Morales, Spider-Man 1.5, if you will, against Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. Now, this one could go either way. I think I know my choice, but I'm going to let you two try to change my mind before you even know. So lay it out. What do you boys think?
Okay, do you want me to dive in first on this one, Davey?
Yeah, by all means, take the reins.
Okay, Miles Morales. Let's start with Miles. Again, just coming off the back of sort of waxing lyrical about Spider-Man 1, and yeah, Spence, you're right. This is Spider-Man 1.5, and we get introduced to the Miles character. This isn't a character I personally knew a lot about coming into the title, but I very much enjoyed where it took me, and that ride was spectacular. And it is a game I have actually got the platinum for, so goal. The one thing that I remember the most about this game, and unfortunately it isn't the gameplay, is that motherfucking soundtrack. Oh, I'm vibing to it now. You know, it's still on my Spotify. When I'm cruising around, I've still got the Miles Morales soundtrack in my car. That's how much the music influenced me. But the game, do I want to revisit it now after I've got the platinum? Probably not, but I had a really good time. Now, Ratchet and Clank. Same sort of story in the sense that I came in and with this one, I knew a lot about it, but I didn't know really where PlayStation were going to take it, okay? Because there was a lot of new aspects to the PlayStation 5 that I wasn't really that knowledgeable on, and what we could possibly see from PlayStation. But this is a true next-gen title from Sony, and it very much flexes the Sony muscles within Rifts Apart. There's lots of very fast loading times, and it uses all the different things that we have on our PlayStation controllers to the extreme. It is the best execution, in my opinion, up to this point of what we've seen on PlayStation. So for that reason, and that reason alone, I would vote it higher than Miles Morales, but it's backed up with a superb IP that I've loved for a long, long time. Not as long as Spider-Man, but obviously longer than Miles Morales. And it's just a wicked story, and it's just a wicked game, and I would replay it, and I've got the platinum on it. So Ratchet and Clank Rifts Apart is my winner here.
Ooh, right. Well, I think when I look at the two, Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, I never think about anymore. Like, not even remotely think about. I remember when I finished that game and I put it down, earned my platinum, I enjoyed my time with it, and I was impressed by it on a visual aspect, and, you know, especially like the rifts and moving through them, really impressive, really a showcase of what the PlayStation could do, and it felt like the first kind of, well, apart from Demon's Souls, it felt like what the PlayStation's capable of. It felt like you're playing a Pixar game. But in saying that, Miles Morales, there's the moment straight after you go through the mall and you know, with the Rhino, and you zip up to a lamppost, and the soundtrack kicks in. And I knew that moment that I was playing a game that I'll fucking remember forever. I remember just literally sitting there, and it just kicks in. This is my time. And you're just sitting there, and I was just like, I ain't fucking moving. I ain't fucking leaving. And I just listened to the entire song just while I was there, and I was like, oh my fucking God. And I was so excited. And even though it's a shorter experience, that excitement just never faded. And seeing the way they took the Tinkerer and the relationship that the Miles has throughout that entire story, just vibed. It felt small, but it felt really impactful. The combat changes, the way they incorporated Miles's powers and how he was coping with being a Spider-Man, having the city under his charge for the first time, just really fucking vibe with me. I love Miles Morales. I absolutely love it. To me, it's a clear winner.
Wow. Okay.
Is
So
it
I
up
actually,
to you, Spence?
yeah, I'm actually the
Interesting.
deciding vote. Jeez. Okay. So, it's a bit awkward, this one, because I think they're of similar scale, really, in terms of like Metascore or how you would rate the games. I think they're similar level. But initially, I was going to pick Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, even though I hate the Ratchet and Clank reboot, but Rift Apart was really good. However, I didn't actually enjoy it until I got the rocket boots. And then grinding at the end for the platinum was a pain in the ass. Miles Morales did make us play the entire game again for the platinum, but I literally beat it back to back. I finished the game and I restarted and did it again immediately, and I loved every second of it. Miles does have those moments that stick in your head, and it's a nice, short experience that really stays with you. I was going to go Ratchet, but I think, Davey, you might have swayed me, and I'm going to say Miles moves on.
Ooh. Okay. Ratchet and Clank still class. Great game. Not everything could
Brilliant
be a
game.
winner. It's sad.
I know
It's
how
sad.
these things go, boys. Don't worry. I won't take it to heart.
That's all right. We have our next round. So we have God of War 2018, the reboot, and we have Horizon Forbidden West. Now, I'm not sure what Davey's going to vote on this. So, Phil, I'd like to pass it over to you first.
Wow, I clearly know what Davey's going to vote on this one. But let's see where I go with this conversation first, shall we? Maybe I'll try and spice it up a little bit, because I know we both will probably end up going. So, Horizon Forbidden West, yes, this game was spectacular, and it was my game of the year. Yes, there are some grumbles when we talk about combat being slightly repetitive, and then there were some aspects where it was just a bit buggy, especially when it came to the water. But the transition between Zero Dawn and Forbidden West is night and day. This very much is a next generation console game, and this is what I want on my PS5. Some of the vistas that you took in as you were traversing across the cliffs as Aloy were absolutely spectacular, and those are moments that'll go down in my PlayStation journey forever, and I'll look back on looking over that horizon and just being wowed by it, because truly to that point that was the first time I'd ever just been like, wow, and just put down the controller and just wanted to look at what was available. It was a feast for my eyes, that game. And we've gone back and forth, and we've had it against God of War Ragnarok, and I can admit God of War Ragnarok objectively is a better game, but I think personally I enjoyed Forbidden West a lot more than I did Ragnarok. But coming over to God of War 2018, this was a game, Davey, you very much talked me into playing. Again, didn't really vibe with me 100% when I first started. I don't have that affinity with the character as much as maybe you do for playing 1, 2, and 3. Obviously, I had quite a bad experience with number 3 because I kind of deemed it as being, you know, a Devil May Cry kind of rip-off hack and slash game. I didn't really get it when I played it and didn't really enjoy it, okay? But God of War, I did go back to it. I think I actually played it on my PS4 Pro, my art piece that I have. And it very much sang. It was an enjoyable game. I did enjoy where the story went. There was a nice twist at the end, which was a nice nod to some of the mythology that, you know, I understand through probably Marvel more than anything. But yeah, I really enjoyed God of War. So this one is actually a tough one for me. But I am going to side with my game of the year, which was Horizon Forbidden West.
There we are. There we have it. So, Davey, over to you. Rebuttal or agreement?
I'm a bit torn. If I'm honest, I'm actually a bit torn. Because 2018 God of War, I look back on it now, and I'm like, I would not go back and play that game again. Because Ragnarok just does everything so much better. Like, so much better. I don't think I could go back and play it and find the same level of enjoyment with it. I've also got to check myself, though, because when you're thinking about a series, a story does God of War, to be able to take that out of everything it's ever known for like 7 entries, totally re-envision it, and do it so fucking well. Like that boulder fight at the start of 2018 God of War is like one of the best moments I think ever. It's so fucking good. So cinematic. And that moment, I remember showing my dad after that happened on YouTube, and he was like, oh my God, I need to play this. Like, when he eventually gets a PlayStation, which I'll be buying one for him, spoiler alert, hope he doesn't listen to this episode, he's going to play that game, and he's going to absolutely love it. So I'm kind of torn, because Forbidden West had all the ingredients to knock it out of the park. Story-wise, I think it did a really good job, and I really enjoyed where it went. But the gameplay, I complained about it at the time, and I will continue and forever complain about it, because I think they made... Whereas I talked about how good Zero Dawn was in terms of all its weapons singing together and it all kind of coming together and coalescing, Forbidden West just makes it more complicated for no reason. Like, no reason whatsoever. And doesn't really add any value or reason to deviate off and try something new. So you've got increased skill systems, you've got these new nodes that you put into your weapons, which are the big things they showed in the trailer that made it all look cinematic and everything. And really, it's all just a load of bollocks, because they could have slimmed that all right down and made it much cleaner and made there a reason to have different weapons rather than just some now all of a sudden apply different status effects. And so you end up having all these weapons that you want to be able to use because you're fighting different machines that are weak against different things, but you can't find the best weapons for it because you've got to make sure that, oh, my hunter bow that could do loads of damage, I've got to take a fire one because I don't have fire on anything else. And there might be something that's weak against fire. So it kind of just undoes itself at every single turn. But the story fucking slaps tits. And there's a moment in that when you come out of when you're in Las Vegas, and you come out and you change the sky, and the sky gets lit up with different holidays, and you can pick which holiday you want. And I always think about Ramadan, and it's Ramadan at the moment for people, and there's a Ramadan one, and I always remember thinking, oh, that's fucking cool. They put that in there for people. They'll love that. So I'm kind of torn. I think 2018 gets held back by the fact that Ragnarok's better, but that's not the game's fucking fault. So I'm going to give it to 2018. Whereas Horizon Forbidden West had the same opportunity that Ragnarok does, but it doesn't deliver it. So I'm going to go for 2018 God of War.
Okay, so I'm deciding yet again. Kind of sucks on this one, just because I've not played Forbidden West. But I didn't like 2018. So, where do I lie, really? I think that the issue is I don't feel any rush to play Horizon. It's not a world I care for too much. But I would go back to God of War 2018 for the Platinum and to see if my mind might have changed since Ragnarok. Because I adored Ragnarok so much. So for that reason, I think I have to give it to God of War 2018. But honestly, I think if I played the two of them back to back, I think I'd prefer Forbidden West. But I just haven't yet.
I mean, vote for whatever you want to vote for. But to me, that sounds like you'd vote for Forbidden West over it.
It would, but I can't because I might be wrong. I might have the same issues you have, and it might be elevated. It's based on ignorance, you know. So I can't. I have to give it to God of War.
Okay.
Because at least I know about that game. For our next matchup, lads, we have The Last of Us Part 1 versus Ghosts of Tsushima. Now, I think probably pass it over to you, Davey, first, because I think you're the only one who's played both.
Oh, this fucking sucks, man. Because like Ghost of Tsushima slaps. It's so good. It's definitely, if you're talking about like open world games, the gulf between Ghost of Tsushima and Horizon is like infinite. Ghost of Tsushima does it so much better in like every single way. All the side activities really, really fun. Everything that you upgrade or you do has consequence. The story is amazing. I can't wait to see what happens in number 2 because there's a choice at the end of the first game. I don't know which one's going to be canon or not. So it's really fucking good. Problem is, The Last of Us is one of the best games ever made. So I got to vote Last of Us.
Oh boy. Phil, over to you, mate. Go on. Lay it on me.
Okay, well, I think it's a pretty easy choice for me because I've never played Ghost of Tsushima, so unfortunately I'm in a place of ignorance on that game, but I know it is very highly regarded and I know it did particularly well in Sony's version of this, but it's not going to beat The Last of Us Part 1 for me, but I haven't actually played Part 1. I've only played The Last of Us Remake. I never played the original, I believe, on the PS3. I only played the remake on the PS4 version of The Last of Us. So if it's anything like that, but I believe they included some extra t-shirts in Part 1. I think that was the addition, wasn't it? And then some extra controlled AI, which I'm sure makes absolutely no difference to the actual game because it's all about that incredible story that The Last of Us 1 has. So my vote, 100%, is for The Last of Us Part 1. It's an incredible experience.
Well, I'm a bit sour on Last of Us Part 1 at the moment, unfortunately, but it is still my favorite game of all time. So, and I haven't played Ghosts, even though I'm sure I would adore it. But will I adore it more than Last of Us Part 1? It's a slim shot. I doubt it. So Last of Us does just have to move on. What game? Ooh.
Oh, fuck.
This is the one I've been waiting for.
Oh, no.
Our next matchup, Returnal versus Demon's Souls. Oh, shit. I think, for one, Phil, I just have to pass it to you right away for this.
Okie doke. Well, I've not played Demon's Souls, so again, I'm in a place of ignorance with that game in particular. But again, I know it is held in high regard, and it did very well on the PS5. Returnal, I did buy, and I didn't exactly vibe with it, but I can see it from an outside perspective, and I think objectively, this is a spectacular game. We have again wax lyrical about how well Housemarque has transitioned from maybe an indie developer to this big, almost AAA, I suppose you would call Returnal, which very much impressed you boys. So my vote is, it's a quick one on this one because I don't really have a lot to add. My vote would go for Returnal.
Nice. Okay, Davey, go on, just say it.
So this is a tough one, right? Because Demon's Souls, I'd never played the original on PS3. And so going into this, I played all the rest of FromSoft's Soulsborne series, and I've loved every single one. Demon Souls was the one that I put into the PS5, and it blew my fucking tits off. And it continues to blow my tits off, because I've gone back and replayed this several times. My girlfriend is actually currently playing through Demon Souls at the moment. And so when she gets a bit stuck, and there's take over the reins, baby, and lay the absolute smack down on these creatures. It's just got to happen.
I thought you were going to go for a wrestling quote there. Brilliant.
It has to be done.
I could smell what you were cooking.
Oh, God, right. God damn right. The issue is, right, Demon Souls is probably the worst Souls game out of all of them, I would argue. The areas are immense. Bosses are gimmicks. And that's just what happened is they transitioned from that into making Dark Souls, which just absolutely slaps tits. We don't talk about Dark Souls 2. And then Dark Souls 3 and Bloodborne, absolutely incredible, right? Returnal is one of the few games this generation that I've put a 10 out of 10. And to me, it is my second favorite game of this generation. I remember saying after I played it, it's going to take something really fucking special to knock this off the best game on PlayStation 5. And it turned out it was God of War Ragnarok. If it wasn't for Ragnarok, this would still be my favorite game on the console. Returnal slaps fucking tits. Returnal easily my vote. Not even a question.
So again, my vote means nothing. However, I would have voted Returnal too. Returnal is phenomenal. One of my favorite games on the system as well. And although Demon Souls is awesome, the bosses are gimmicks, because obviously this is their first go at it, really. They weren't sure how to do the bosses, so they just made them all a different gimmick other than the final boss and
the fire boss thing. He was a normal boss, wasn't he?
The fire boss with the broken AI.
Yeah, the AI was fucked. But it was a normal boss at least, right?
It was a normal boss, yeah. And then there was the Punisher or whatever he was called, with the big spear. And then there's the final boss, King Elant.
Oh yeah.
As well.
Oh, that's a good boss.
Yeah, and those are good bosses, but the rest of the game lets it down. However, it is still just a graphical marvel. It is, to this day, still the most beautiful game I have probably ever seen on the PS5. And I wouldn't be surprised if nothing beats it. It is amazing to look at. That being said, the gameplay of Returnal is amazing. The horror aspects when you do your first playthrough, amazing. You forget about those after grinding for the platinum. But the horror aspects in the story, which no one can quite make sense of, is really good. Returnal has to win. It's just such an amazing game.
I think about that piano boss, the organ boss, pretty much like weekly as well. Like in World 4, that boss, textbook boss design.
Sick.
So good.
Up next, lads, we have Death Stranding versus Spider-Man 2. This one, I feel like I know where it's going to go, but maybe you guys will surprise me. Davey, over to you first this time.
For me, this is easy as hell. Spider-Man 2 is worse than Spider-Man, the original. It's worse. The story's worse. Gameplay's better, sure. Story, shit in comparison, I think. It just didn't work for me. Death Stranding is so original. It's incredible. I don't love it as much as Phil does, but I still absolutely adore it. And it's the reason why my YouTube started going down review series. It's the first game I ever reviewed. I love Death Stranding with every single fiber of my being. It's not perfect, but it's goddamn close. It's fucking immense. I absolutely love it. Easy Death Stranding for me. Easy. Not even fucking close between these two. Not even close.
And that's what Davey's saying. Phil, should I even ask?
Well, it's funny because I was thinking, let's concentrate on the negative of Spider-Man 2 and try and put Davey off and get, Death Stranding to be highlighted and hopefully get through to the next part of this bracket. But what I want to do here, because I love Death Stranding so much, is save all that positivity, because I'm clearly going to vote for Death Stranding regardless, right? But I feel in future rounds, I'm going to have to try hard to win you guys over, okay? So I'm going to save all the positive stuff I was going to say about Death Stranding. Spider-Man 2, great game, really enjoyed it. Yeah, you're right, probably just should have been DLC with Venom, or they should just concentrate on Venom all the way through the game. It was good, it was fun, but it ain't a Death Stranding, so my vote is for Death Stranding, and I'm going to save all the amazing things I want to say about Death Stranding probably to the next round, where I think I'm going to have to fight for it.
Respect. I like that logical as well.
Playing the game, mate.
So Death Stranding wins, but I will say my piece. I adored Spider-Man 2. I platinumed it in, 2 or 3 days?
Yeah, really quick.
I could not put the game down. Yeah, I loved it. I was obsessed with it. But although I haven't really played Death Stranding too much, I would still say I'm quite obsessed with it. It's not come off my console since the first time I downloaded it, and I'm always in the back of my head saying, oh, I just want to play Death Stranding. I just want to play it. That's the game I want to play. But then a new game comes out, and it's like, oh, on the back of the board. If I hadn't played either of these 2 games, I'd play Spider-Man 2, obviously. Well, Death Stranding wins, but I think I would have to put my vote for Spider-Man 2. But I cannot wait to experience Death Stranding. I'm super excited for it.
Oh, God.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So for, I think our final, let me check. Yeah. So for our final matchup of the night, because we're only doing round 1 tonight, we will progress this tournament further in the future. But this is our final matchup of the evening. It is Gran Turismo 7 versus The Last of Us Part 2.
Fuck me.
Who wants to go first? Should we even have a conversation, boys?
I think we should, only because GT7, for its props, right? We're not car people, and I'm not
It's brilliant.
I'm not a racing sim guy. GT7 slaps big old tits. That VR experience is probably the best VR experience I've ever had. I mean, golf's great and all, but actually driving a car and feeling like I can drive a car is insanely good. Like, with the wheel setup and everything, worth every single bit of fucking money. Haven't put as much time in as I should, and that's on me. But anytime I want to show off VR, I put them in Gran Turismo. And I put the wheel up, and I put them in it, and I'm like, enjoy. You're going to drive a car. What car do you drive in real life? Here we go, I'll put you in that car. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh, and everyone's like, fucking hell, it is like driving a car. Yeah, it is. That's what it is. Except you can write your car off and there's no real damage to it. Last of Us Part 2 is better than Last of Us 1. I will fucking die on that hill. I will die on that hill. I don't care who says to me, oh, but the relationship, oh, I can't believe they did this to this character. Get over it. The guy was a bastard man. He needed to die. Last of Us Part 2 is one of the best games I've ever played in my life. Easy. And easily the game that I've cried the most at. I was sobbing through so much of that game. The story got me so well. Incredible. A testament to what can be achieved in AAA gaming.
Damn, big praise. I reckon your crying record is going to change when Sparking Zero comes out. But
yeah,
for now, fair points. Phil, mate, how about you?
Well, having never played GT7, I can only talk about what I've seen in social and what I've heard from you guys. And I know it is a spectacular experience, especially with the added VR. And I think you boys bought steering wheels and seats. As much as you guys aren't racing fans, you very much spent some money on the GTA 7 series and really enjoyed your time in there. You know, you talked quite positively about your experiences. And yeah, I could understand that being the best that we have to offer on PlayStation. I don't really see many people saying, no, there's a better, racer out there for PlayStation. Okay, it's always the Forza versus GT7 if we've got Lewis on the podcast. But I'm very proud to have GT7 and then progressing the series to where it is, because it's been with us for a long time, and I think it's going to be still with us, for another 5 PlayStations. It's always going to be a PlayStation staple, right? But The Last of Us, yeah, Davey, you've pretty much summed it up. It is one of the best games of all time, and it is in my... Is it in my top 5? I think it's in my top 5. Maybe I'll have to wait for a short, but it is very much up there as one of my favorite games of all time. I've got to echo your thoughts in the sense that it is better than The Last of Us 1. I enjoyed this game on a far higher level, and there are so many very memorable points. You only have to take yourself back to the museum when they're sat in the the rocket, and it just brings tears to your eyes. It's just a beautiful game. It's a masterpiece. It really is. And I think this one is going to be hard to knock off. So I'm really looking forward to the future of this. Not to foreshadow it, when God of War comes up against The Last of Us 2. Pretty much. That's going to be the tough argument, isn't it? So my vote is going to be Last of Us 2 on this one.
Sure. So Last of Us 2 has won, but I will say my piece anyway. I did bring this on kind of just, what's the point? Gran Turismo does deserve some respect. It is a phenomenal game, the best of its kind, in my opinion. The VR aspect is brilliant. And like you said, we're not car heads, we're not car guys, but it was to the level where it made us buy the wheel and the VR and everything and just experience it. And it is the best VR experience I have ever had as well. But it is going up against Last of Us Part 2, which I personally think is the best game ever made. It's not my favorite game of all time, just because it is a bit too long. But gameplay, story, character-wise, the pacing, I think it is, well, maybe not pacing, but I think it is the best game of all time. So it's quite an easy decision here, and I'm glad we're all unanimous. But that is it for round 1, lads. And after the first round, these are the games that we have left. So round 1, we have Horizon Zero Dawn, first God of War Ragnarok, into God of War 2018 to Miles Morales, into Last of Us Part 2, Death Stranding, and then Last of Us Part 1, Returnal. So lads, let's get started on the first one. Horizon Zero Dawn versus God of War Ragnarok. Who wants to open?
Fucking hell. I tell you, Jesus Christ. Have you ever seen somebody get so battered in real life that you look away? This is going to be one of those times,
like,
man, where you just like, yeah, you're like, oh, fuck. You watch it first, and the build-up's there, and you see the first swing, and someone goes down hard, like they hit the fucking concrete on the first hit, and you think, no, this is he's gonna die, bro. Get off him. He's gonna fucking die. And the face is just mush. It's paste, bro. Unfortunately, Horizon Zero Dawn, I love you, and it got really far here. Like, much further than it did in the Sony bracket, but you're facing fucking God of War Ragnarok, kid. No fucking hope, mate. No hope. Phil, I mean, I know you love Zero Dawn as much as I do. Are you backing me on this?
It's very difficult to argue against you on this one, because God of War Ragnarok is a far superior game. But one thing I will say for Horizon Zero Dawn, this was it was a success at the time, because, Guerrilla venturing out with this new IP, and there was lots of very rewarding and very interesting dynamics to this game. They took a big risk on creating something like this, and by God, they pulled it off. And it's a series that I absolutely love. I probably love the IP better than the God of War series, but God of War objectively is a far better game to be playing. So yes, my vote will go for God of War Ragnarok.
Nice. Well, that's 2 votes for God of War, and I'm just going to make it 3, boys. Let's be honest. It's the best game on the PS5. What are we saying? Come on. God of War Ragnarok sweeps that round. Nice and easy. Up next. Ooh, that round's going to suck. Up next, we have God of War 2018 versus Spider-Man Miles Morales. Now, I know my thoughts on this. I'll tell you what, I'll start. For me, it's Miles Morales. I had a lot more fun with Miles Morales than I did with God of War. And for me, God of War 2018, I didn't like it anywhere near as much as Ragnarok, and it just dragged on for me. whereas Miles is short, sweet, and just a really good experience. So my vote, I'm giving it 1 to Miles. You boys, more than happy if you to disagree with me, but I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Fuck, this one's hard, you know. This one's fucking hard. Phil, feel free to jump in, bro. I might need some fucking thinking time with this one.
Well, I think I might have to make up your mind for you if I go before you. Not to foreshadow where my vote will go, but I think it's pretty obvious that I would vote for Miles Morales in this situation, purely because I didn't get on with God of War. I've never really enjoyed the series up until Ragnarok. And yes, that is a beautiful game. It is a game of the year. It is one of the best games on PlayStation 5. And inevitably, just to foreshadow it, it won the Sony one and it'll probably win ours, right? But okay, it might be close at the end because I know we're fans of some of the other series, but it's going to have a strong showing here. But God of War 18, I remember buying it sort of late on and then sort of stop-start in the game, never really gelling with it. I didn't get anywhere close to the Platinum Trophy with it, but I did play it to fruition with God of War 18. But Miles Morales, I did get the Platinum, and that music, man, it's life-changing. Honestly, life-changing. And it made me love a new version of Spider-Man. It really did. And opened me up into a whole new world of Spider-Men. Because I never knew anything about Miles Morales pre-playing that game. And yeah, I'm a fan. I'm a big, big fan. So my vote would go Miles Morales.
Oh, I know it doesn't matter what I think now. God of War 2018 is so impactful. Like, when you talk about changes to, you know, games like the games that can't be mentioned and how they take it in different directions, God of War 2018 totally re-envisioned what the God of War franchise could be. It brought Kratos down to somebody that you can actually sympathize with and you can find an emotional attachment to. And seeing the story him and Atreus go on and seeing their bond grow as the game goes on is immense. You know, the fight with Baldur at the beginning, the fight with Baldur at the end. So good. So good. Like Mamiya, the fucking world serpent in the fucking... So good.
But
they're all good games.
But Miles is just a feeling and a place. And putting that on the PS5 and feeling the haptics, the music pumping on in my headset, the snow falling down is just sitting outside that mall on that lamppost. Not feeling like it. Miles, clean sweep, boys. Clean sweep.
Sony didn't see this one coming.
all right, well, clean sweep for Miles Morales. Moving on, we have The Last of Us Part 2 versus Death Stranding. Now, I know my thoughts on this. I'm sure I know Phil's. I'd love to hear Davies. So what I'll do first, Phil, I'd love for you to open this.
I think this is going to be my biggest challenge, purely because I love both of these games immensely. And if someone was going to ask me for a top 10, maybe even a top 5, I think both of these games would feature. Now, Death Stranding obviously is where my vote is going to go because I think it changed my life in gaming terms. It made me look at video games in a completely different way. And the idea of Death Stranding, the story, the invention of this genre by Hideo Kojima, it's just mind-blowing to even consider. And I'm surrounded by Death Stranding kind of paraphernalia that I've purchased over the time. I went back and purchased the collector's edition. I actually had to go all the way. Well, I was on holiday in the United States, and I managed to track down a version. So I have the big case and the baby, and I've got the PlayStation 4 Pro with the handprints on. I've got books and everything else that you could think Death Stranding, because I am that much of a fan of Death Stranding, and I would say it is my favorite game of all time. So it'd be very difficult for me to say The Last of Us would win this, but shout out The Last of Us Part 2. That is my favorite The Last of Us. I think it's better than the original. I know a lot of people have got a lot of grumbles when it comes to that game, but it shines. It really, really does. And this is very hard. You know, Death Stranding's a 10. Last of Us Part 2 for me is like a 9. It's like a 9.9. It's really, really close. I love it. I love both these games. It's like having two children, but one is probably going to do slightly better in school, isn't he? So Death Stranding. I'm going to go Death Stranding.
I mean, all on board until that analogy at the end. But fair enough, mate. Fair enough. I'll go next. For me, I've only played a few hours of Death Stranding, but I adored it. So I just need to give it that time. But let's be honest, Last of Us is my favorite franchise of all time. My vote easily goes Last of Us Part 2. And I agree with you. I think it's better than Part 1, but it just runs a little bit too long. That is all I can say on it. I think it's a near perfect game. If not, is just a perfect game. I adore it. So it gets my vote immediately. Davey, you're on the hot seat.
Fuck me. Why do I have to be the decider on this one? Right. I'll put it out there. I'm not as fanatical about Death Stranding as Phil is, but I adored the game. And at the time of its release, I remember feeling like as if we hadn't started the podcast at that point. And I remember feeling like I was shouting into a void because everyone was saying how fucking boring it was. And I was just thinking, how can you not see how fucking genius this game is? Like, it's so well done. The story's amazing. How unique it is, it's just incredible. And there's beauty in the moments of silence as you are just trying to figure your way up a hill or to come down a hill or whatever it is. And then when those musical cues hit, there's not really many feelings like it. It's so good. There are issues with it. Combat isn't very good. Combat with anything isn't very good at all. And sure, that's not really the point of the game, but it is a major pointer of it. You can only throw bottles of piss at things for so long before you start to see that there's an issue here. But it's a small component. The overall experience of Death Stranding is absolutely phenomenal. And if it was up against anything else on this list, it would have a really fucking good chance of beating it. Unfortunately, it's up against The Last of Us Part 2. And The Last of Us Part 2, I said at the time, is the best game on PlayStation 4. Hands down. Hands down. It's one of the best games I've ever experienced in my life. It's the game that I've had the biggest emotional attachment to out of any game ever. I've never cried so much as I have during my experience with The Last of Us Part 2. From the moment that game opens and you have the scene where Joel is in the garage talking to Tommy, I cried there. I cried when the horse came over the fucking ridge. The moments with the Rat King, like there's so many just fucking awesome moments in that game. And sure, it might outstay its welcome, but it's the best gameplay Naughty Dog have ever done. And for me, it's their best story they've ever told. It's one of the best games ever made. It's The Last of Us Part 2 for me.
Nice. Good.
Hurts
Good
me to do it. Hurts me to do it.
There we are. So speaking of Last of Us, we now have its predecessor, Last of Us Part 1, versus Davy's little PS5 baby, Returnal. Phil, over to you first with this one.
I think this one's a pretty easy one for me. Obviously, The Last of Us was a very good game. I've not played Part 1, obviously. I played the PS4 remaster of The Last of Us and thoroughly enjoyed it. And it did lead me into probably one of the best gaming experiences of my life with The Last of Us Part 2. So it's got a lot to sort of answer for Part 1. And I think it is a game that, again, I would put down in the history of Phil Hoy. You know, it would be up there. It would be a game I would talk about years to come and think about from years to come. But when we come over to Returnal, it just didn't gel with me. Like, I know you guys have sort of waxed lyrical episode after episode about how great Returnal is because it gelled with you. It's the type of gameplay, it's the type of genre you guys, enjoy, but it just didn't work for me. Visuals are on a whole different level. If we were judging it just on visuals, obviously Returnal would kill here. But my vote here, purely for the gameplay experience and gameplay is king, Last of Us Part 1, there's the winner for you.
Yeah, I'm not surprised by that one, mate. Not surprised at all. Davey, mate, over to you. What are your thoughts?
The Last of Us Part 1, or The Last of Us, is the best game on the PlayStation 3. And it's a fantastic game. The issue is number 2 exists. a number 2 does its gameplay much better than the first one. And I would argue it has a better story than the first one, even though a lot of people would say it doesn't. It's not as tight, but it offers more emotional depth than the first one does. And the first one goes very fucking hard. Returnal is probably the best gameplay experience on the PlayStation 5. I think it probably is. Like, God of War Ragnarok is like insane gameplay, like say a 9 out of 10 gameplay, and then like a 9 or a 10 out of 10 story, right? It nails both. Returnal, no story at all. Fucking throw that out the window. Shit. But in terms of gameplay, it's a fucking straight 11 out of 10. It's so fucking good. And it just gets better the more you play it, as soon as you learn extra tech and as soon as you do extra things. They've added in new modes. I think it's probably the best game Housemarque have ever made. And they've made so many fucking good games. I know my vote isn't going to matter here, but I feel like I'll be doing Returnal dirty if I don't give it a vote. And every time I scroll Twitter and I see somebody that's not played Returnal before and they've thought, yeah, I'm going to go back and check it out, and they always show the video footage of the fucking organ boss. And that is one of the most special moments I've ever had on my PlayStation 5, even this many years on. Such a great boss fight. And the music of like entire areas just plays in my head. I love Returnal. I love it so fucking much. I'm going to give it a vote.
Tell you what, I know you love Returnal, but I didn't think you'd vote for it. So fair enough. Respect, bro. The issue is I adore both these games. I could give Returnal so much praise because, like you said, it is probably the best gameplay experience on the PS5. And one of the best I've ever experienced in my life. But it's competing against Last of Us Part 1, which I've literally just beaten for like the 14th time. I adore it. It's my favorite game. It's going to get my vote. It has to. If I didn't, I'd be lying to myself and to you guys. So Last of Us Part 1 moves on, unfortunately.
I was safe going for the Returnal knowing that you'd go Last of Us. And I felt like I had to give it some props.
We knew what was going to happen. But moving on to the next round of the bracket, we have God of War Ragnarok versus Spider-Man Miles Morales. Now, I know we were chatting about Miles is actually a really sick game. How in-depth do we need to go here, boys?
I think we all know who's going to win this one. And this is difficult, isn't it? It's wild that we have this beautiful array of top titles here, and we're almost coming across quite sad and somber in the way we're describing this, because we don't want to lose a friend, a family member. It's as if they're, passing away or moving on, or we're losing them in some way. I'm still in tears after losing Death Stranding. Davey's, like mourning Returnal here. And we're going to have to do the same to Miles, because God of War Ragnarok is a better game. It's a fuller game. It's a much better experience. So my vote, God of War.
It's a fucking clean sweep, boys.
Yeah.
Miles doesn't stand a chance.
No.
It's an 8 out of 10 compared to a 10. It's that.
Yeah,
This one,
that
though,
one
fuck
clicking
me,
over.
fuck
This one's
me.
mad.
Oh, fuck me.
I know what my vote is immediately. So I'll let Davey, you can start this time because I feel like you haven't been starting much.
So we've got The Last of Us Part 2 versus The Last of Us Part 1. Now, if Potato Chief was here, he'd be saying Part 1 100%, fuck Part 2. But fortunately, he's not here, and it's me. I am going to go Part 2. And the reason why I'm going Part 2 is because it is learned from everything from The Last of Us 1, and in my eyes, improved it. The gameplay is much improved. You can actually lie down. You've got so many more combat options. Dogs are fucking terrifying in that game. And I think even though 1 has probably got... One's tricky because it's just like a perfect story. There's not... I can't sit here and say like, oh, 1 would be perfect if... or anything like that. The only reason that gets 1 down below 2 is because 2 exists and it improved the gameplay. That's it. If Part 1, with the remake, if they'd gone back and added in Part 2's combat options, Part 1, I reckon, would slap the tits out of it. it would absolutely slap the tits out of it. But because they didn't do that, part 2 is an improvement in my eyes. And for most of it, you are playing. You know, you're not just watching and experiencing the story, and the story's on par with it. So it's got to be part 2 for me.
Yeah, that's fair enough, mate. Fair enough. So that's one vote for part 2. Phil, over to you. What is your choice?
I'm sorry to say, Spencer, because I think you may vote for part 1. I'm going to back Davey up on this one, because part 2 was a big step forward in sort of every respect in my mind. Maybe outside story, as Davey said, it was roughly on par, maybe a little bit lacking compared to the original. But I remember so much more of part 2. Maybe it's because I played it much more recently than part 1, but it stuck with me. And like, I remember like it was yesterday with the context sensitive combat. I just thought it was real. You know, when you're Ellie and you're just like moving through like a store and you've got people hunting you down and the sweat literally is dripping off your neck and you're feeling every moment. I love those type of games where you get that very visceral kind of reaction to a game and you put yourself in that spot, and Last of Us Part 2 definitely did. You know, this is the game, like Davey said, I cried at multiple times, and you know, even the times where it's joyous, I was shedding a tear. When you're sat in the Science Museum is the one that always really sticks with me, when they're sat in the top of the rocket and they're looking up at the top of the rocket or the stars, and it was just an out of body experience. It's very weird to describe this game like that, but it spoke to me on so many levels. So yes, The Last of Us 2 is going to get my vote.
Fair enough. I'll tell you what, I completely agree with both of you. As much as I adore part 1 and it is my favorite game, Last of Us 2 is a better game. It's just not my favorite. I mean, part 1, obviously I've just finished it again. I still don't skip any cutscenes because the story gets me every damn time. I love it and I adore it. I've still only beaten part 2 once on release. I've not gone back to it. And it's because I keep telling myself it's such a great game that I want to savor it for when I really, really want to get back to it. And I want to do it now. Already, I'm straight off Last of Us 1 and I want to get back to part 2. It's a perfect game. And those people that are on about the story, they know one thing about the story and just hate the game because of it. It's brilliant in every single aspect, part 2. And nothing else has made me feel the same way. So yeah, it's a clean sweep, 3-0 for part 2. Which means we have our grand finals. I don't know if anyone could have guessed it, but it's God of War Ragnarok. It's Last of Us Part 2. Shit. Okay, so who wants to start? Because I don't.
I think I can make it easy.
Go on, Phil.
I know what mine
Okay.
would be. Mine is The Last of Us Part 2. If I'm having to choose, which I'm going to, I would rather play that game again than play Ragnarok. If I was sat there and I had my, you know, allocated time to play video games, I was allowed that down on the PlayStation late at night to play one of these games through once again, and there was nothing else as an option, I would definitely go for The Last of Us Part 2, for a lot of the reasons that I went over earlier, for pushing it through some previous rounds. It is an absolutely spectacular game, and I love the series. I think that speaks to me a lot more than the God of War. I haven't got that affinity, as I keep referring to God of War, because maybe I didn't grow up with it in the same way Davey did with, you know, the originals on the previous PlayStations. But The Last of Us, I've played both of the games and loved every experience. So Last of Us Part 2 is my winner. And yeah, I gotta sit back now and watch the chaos.
Davey, mate, do you think you're ready to talk yet?
I think so. I think I am, yeah. I think I
Okay.
am. Fuck, this is so hard. So it's really difficult, because whenever I think of Last of Us 2, it's always those little moments, right? Just of little moments of wonder that you have in its gameplay. So, like, I always think about there's a moment where you're getting hunted by, you know, that clan who always wear, like, coats or whatever, and I can't remember what they're called now, but you're in, like, a car park, and the slope's going up, and there's, like, a broken, I remember it so fucking vividly, there's, like, a broken bit of concrete, and it's just a car that's like perfectly positioned there, and I was ducking down behind it, and a guy was like, what's that? And there's a guy coming above down this way, and a guy here, and I was like, I don't want to fucking get into a fight here. I don't have much ammo. I don't really want to get into a fight here. If I could just sneak through, it's gonna be class. And then I got past the first one and got seen by the guy up here, and it all hell broke loose, bro. And it's like Molotov cocktails everywhere, fucking bow and arrows out, and it was nuts. And I managed to escape it, and I was like, oh, fucking hell, that was so intense. Like, oh my God. And then it goes from that and barrels into like a big story moment, which then you get, instead of that intensity, you get just this moment of either pure rage or pure like fucking sadness. And it just like throws you between all these emotions all the way. God of War Ragnarok, what that does is it slow builds. It slow builds for so long. And you're like, okay, you're along for the ride, you're entertained, you're going for it, you're learning more, you're like really appreciating it, you're learning more about its combat, you're getting better, you're just improving on every single level. And then the story just goes like, peaks a bit, and you think, fuck me, that was amazing, that was one of the best moments I've ever seen in my life. And then it just goes, oh, fuck that, nah, we're just going now. And it just like rises to like this point where it's just fucking insane. And I don't want to go into spoilers, so I'll keep this vague, but when you go in, you blow the horn, like my entire body was goosebumped all over, and I'm getting goosebumps now thinking about it, and I was like, this is one of the best game moments I've ever had in my life. I was just so in for it. And you go into what is then the final part of the game, and it's like you're fucking watching an MCU movie. There's shit everywhere going on, and you've mastered everything by that point, and you're just fucking laying waste to shit. So fucking good. And then by the time you've actually done all that, and you're going off and doing the side quest content, and you're fighting all the different kings, and you're fighting bosses, which in other games would be like world-ending bosses, like the main thing to show. But it's like, oh no, this is just a side quest guy. It's just around the corner. It's just that it's a fucking insane boss fight, and you've got 20 of these to go. So, get good. So fucking good. So fucking good. I think I would be torn on this a lot more if I hadn't played Valhalla recently. Playing Valhalla and learning how fucking good that combat is again, where it just came back to me and I was like, why did I ever put this game down? Like, playing through that extra bit and seeing what happens with Tyr and all that, I could wait for Last of Us Part 3. I can't wait for the next God of War.
Wow.
It's simple as that. I can't wait for the next God of War. Whatever they do, whenever they show Kratos next, I'm going to pop off. Last of Us 3, I could wait. I'm not itching for it. Ragnarok, to me, second favorite game I've ever played in my life. It has to win for me. Has to.
Wow.
Does everything perfect.
Now it's on to me. Fuck's sake. Right, well, God of War Ragnarok is the best game on the PS5. And Last of Us Part 2 is the best game on the PS4. The issue is they brought it over to the PS5. Is it now the best game on PS5? The issue is none of us have played this version of it. And granted, we have just dipped back into Valhalla and we've remembered the combat. The combat in Last of Us Part 2 is so sick. It's so good. That scene that you were on about, Davey, with the tunnels, you can lie down underneath the cars. And you can like shoot their feet to make them look down and then shoot them in the head. It's so sick. Oh, I adore Ragnarok and I can't wait to play it again. But for me, Last of Us wins. It's a perfect experience. They're both perfect experiences, but they're just different. And my preference is for Last of Us Part 2. So for me, Last of Us wins.
It's like Phil said earlier, the analogy of picking between your favorite children. That's what this entire bracket has been, isn't it? It's like we got 8 kids or whatever, and you've just got to pick the best one. And it is such a hard task. Such a hard task. I mean, what a final though. There's nothing in there that I think, that doesn't deserve to be there. Like, those 2 games are incredible experiences. And sure, we've lost some real contenders along the way, but I'm more than happy with that outcome. More than happy with it.
And me. I'd have been more than happy if it was the other way around as well. Honestly,
Yeah.
I'd have been happy to.
Equally. Yeah,
Yeah.
equally.
Yeah.
Equally as happy. But I am quite chuffed Last of Us 1 because, I like Last of Us more. But yeah, that is it for our bracket.